Hey, welcome everybody. I think everybody online should be here. Is that correct, Leah? And we're recording. Anyway, thanks everybody. This is the recreational breakout. So if you're in the wrong room, please raise your hand and we will help you get to the room you need to be. Not you, Steph. Um, anyway, thanks for being here, everybody. I really appreciate it. Just a reminder, with this meeting, we specifically like to keep questions focused on the forecasts and fishery proposals for this year. However, if you do have anything outside of forecasts and proposals, please see us, and we're more than happy to answer that and or get back to you. But we want to take that information. So again, just trying to focus on the forecast and fishery proposals for 2026 today. However, we want to make sure that you are getting communication from the department, getting your questions answered. So with that being said, I won't go through the meeting guidelines and etiquette. We did that in the last slide. Go to the next slide, please. Yeah, again, recreational breakout. Next slide, please. I feel like I'm yelling in this one. Is it? You don't have to be. Is that better, everybody? Sorry, I didn't mean to yell. Anyway, yeah, my name's Jake Rice, statewide salmon and steelhead manager. I'm up here with Christina Iverson and Haley Rosenthal, and some of our staff is throughout the auditorium. Next slide. Again, so today we'd like to talk about, we'll again just go back through those forecast summaries, comparisons, talk about potential stocks of concern, and then take the recreational considerations, public comment, and that's kind of where the meat of this meeting is. So we'll be pretty quick on through this stuff. However, if you do have questions and stuff, please let us know on specific slides. We're happy to go back and talk to those things in more detail. And then at that, I'll turn it over to Christina.
Thanks, Jake. Just a quick mic check. So what we're going to just kind of briefly walk through a forecast summary, kind of a high level, kind of piggybacking on what you just heard from the larger presentation this morning. Puget Sound Chinook and Coho 2026 forecasts are slightly improved from 2025. What we just want to kind of call to your attention at this time is for Chinook, Stillaguamish Chinook, Nooksack Spring Chinook, and Snohomish Chinook could be limiting for marine areas for 2026. Specifically looking at Coho, again, we're going to be looking at Hood Canal Coho, the Strait of Juan de Fuca Coho, and the interior Fraser, folks refer to also as Thompson, could also be limiting for marine area fisheries for 2026. And we just want to remind folks, in 2025, our final preseason planned exploitation rate for Hood Canal, coming out of like our original modeling exercises, was 35.7. And for interior Fraser, it was 9.9. This is a little bit, oh, sorry, next slide. I've got my own. Okay, there is a bit of a delay, sorry about that. So this is a little bit more in-depth by stock comparison for 2025 forecasts, comparing to 2026 for natural Chinook populations throughout Puget Sound. You can see here this number that we presented in the last presentation. The total for Puget Sound we're looking at for natural Chinook is just over 30,000. You can see a few changes here. As I mentioned, it is largely positive, but White River Spring Chinook did have a decline, as well as Puyallup and Dungeness Springs. Next slide. Okay, hatchery. So for the hatchery, this is the same setup, the comparison of the 2025 forecasts for Chinook compared to 2026 forecasts for Chinook. You can see here in the central and some of the South Sound, it's not looking as great. It's had a bit of a reduction. And so these specific stocks we're looking at are Snohomish, Lake Washington, Green River, and again, the White River Springs. And then also the Dungeness Spring Chinook had a bit of a reduction. So the total that we're looking at here is just over 230,000 for hatchery. Next slide. So for Coho Natural, As we mentioned in the large room, it's looking better overall for 2026. You may see the total at the bottom there. It's just over 400,000. And I wanted to just mention that that's largely driven by natural 2026 forecasts for Skagit coho. You can see that it's over 2 in the comparison column there. And then just wanted to mention briefly, Dungeness coho had a bit of a reduction, as well as the other straits, which we mentioned, and Green River, as well as Nisqually, are stocks that had a bit of a decrease in natural for forecast. And then looking ahead to the hatchery for coho. Next slide. You'll probably notice here for Still-Squamish, there's a 0. We talked a bit about that internally yesterday and what happened there. There was some loss issues, and so that is in fact actually a 0. For Dungeness, we also had a little bit of a reduction for coho for hatchery, as well as the Snohomish. And we did have a question about that yesterday. The Snohomish, that was related to some pre-spawn mortality in river and some high temperatures and flow issues, and like low recruitment to the hatchery. And then I think the rest of them, they're pretty close to 1, but did have some slight reductions in some of the other, like the Puyallup and Nisqually. Next slide, please. And we went over this in the big room again. Just a reminder how we're looking for Puget Sound sockeye forecast. You can see the orange is on the far right. That's the forecast. So for Lake Washington, we're looking at just over 30,000. And again, as we talked about in the big room for Baker Lake, we're looking at roughly 70,000. And the Baker has been on an upward trajectory over the last 10 years. It's up 67% over the last 10 years. And Lake Washington is down 20% from the 10-year average. So here we'll just start talking a little bit about our preseason process. So for folks who are maybe not familiar with NALF stands for, is our New Abundances Last Year Fisheries. So this is the first model run that we do each year to prepare for fisheries. And what we're currently looking at is the information that we have for just the southern U.S. forecasts. We don't have all, as Jake mentioned in the big room, we don't have all of the other forecasts for northern stocks as of yet. So this is just a preliminary look. So in taking a look at where we're at for the natural coho management units, again, just taking a look at the Strait of Juan de Fuca we mentioned previous slides. It is in lows and it's in critical management and then low PST management status for this year. So we're looking at a total exploitation rate of 20%, 10 US SUS. And then for Hood Canal, again, we're just above the critical and into low this year again for the second year. So we'll again be cautious there. Last year, we were bumped into that 45% total exploitation rate category, but we did end up modeling something a little bit less and agreeing to that one with the co-managers. Skagit looks normal and abundant for this year with a 41.5% ER, 60% for SUS. And then Still-Squamish is normal and abundant, looking at 50% ER and a 31% total. And then Snohomish, it's in the low cat management category again, moderate for PST with a 40% exploitation rate, 35.6 total ER. And then this final slide is just some considerations that we've heard, kind of picking up the conversation from PFMC2 last year and things that we heard there as placeholders for consideration when we come out of the gate for 2026. And then things that we've received via email just in the last couple of weeks, just some suggestions and thoughts people had. So we just wanted to highlight those So folks knew that we'd received them and we'd heard that, and we're looking into some of these. The first one here is the Marine Area 5 winter season. We had to reduce that. Actually, last year there wasn't a winter season, so we're looking at possibility for that again this year. We've heard that folks are interested in increased quota levels, so we'll be looking into that. We also would like to investigate adding back non-selective coho time in Marine Area 9 at the end of September, and also in Hood Canal if the modeling allows that. Also, potential additional non-retention Chinook impacts can be built into the Marine Area 11 summer fishery. And then just overall winter Chinook opportunities. We've heard folks are, again, continue to be interested in us building those out. Folks had offered some potential ways to get at that for Marine Area 6 and 7 with using potential gear restrictions or daily limits. So we can maybe have those conversations about what that would look like. Also heard from folks about modeling fixed seasons. So for example, Marine Area 7, where we've had like a couple short days openers and repeat that if we have room. Instead of doing that, looking at like just out of the gate, 6 solid days scheduled and what that might look like. Folks would also like us to consider mark selective for coho in other areas in lieu of shave days or closures. And we've also heard from folks, there's continued interest in catch and release fisheries, quite a bit of interest in beach fisheries. There's a lot of folks that have reached out to us and mentioned, you know, they don't have a boat and they still would like to participate. So just kind of thinking about how we could craft more beach opportunities. And then the final bullet here is the Skokomish River opportunity. We've talked about this before. It comes up every year. I think as far as we're aware, we do have folks that are working directly with the director on some of that resolution, but I don't believe there's been any movement with the Department of Justice over the boundary dispute. So as of it stands right now, we haven't implemented anything additional for that fishery for this year. And then this is just a reminder for folks to fill out the voluntary salmon trip report form. If folks were in the big room earlier, Tom was mentioning how important these are. So there's a couple of different ways folks can submit them. And that information is very helpful for us when we're crafting fisheries. So just kind of another plug for folks to please fill these out. This is our continued schedule for 2026 North of Falcon. So today we're at the statewide forecast meeting. March 18th will be North of Falcon 1, and we'll be back in this room and also virtual. And that will be when we start talking about statewide fishery proposals. March 24th will be a specific Puget Sound freshwater and marine fisheries evening meeting. It's typically from 6 to 8, but I'm not sure if we've locked the time in yet on that one. There'll be a Hood Canal and Strait of Juan de Fuca specific recreational discussion on March 26th, again in the evening, and that'll be available virtual. And then March 31st, we'll be back up at Linwood for North of Falcon 2, continuing discussions on statewide proposals. And then as we've heard earlier today, the Pacific Fishery Management Council meeting will be in Portland this year, and it'll be from April 7th through the 12th, and we'll have morning briefings again with anyone who's available for continued discussions on things that have happened throughout the day for that week. And with that, I think we can open it up for questions.
Before we get there, just a couple reminders. We have a ton of information on our website specific to the North of Falcon schedule, the North of Falcon process, similar with our volunteer or salmon trip reports, as well as there was a number of questions with the ECRCs from the main presentation earlier. So again, there's a lot of that information is on our website. If you can't find it or want to know where that is, come find one of us, or we have our communication staff up in the top that we're happy to point people in the right direction to find that information. As we get started here, we're going to continue to do one question in the room, one question online. All it asks is just state your name and like where you fish, and that would certainly help us as we get questions and proposals so we know kind of where, if it's not specific to a river body or marine area. So If there's something we can't answer, we have our phenomenal regional staff over on the side there that you guys just jump in as normal if you can answer something better than us. So, Mike, thanks for walking around the mic, and we'll get started with the fine gentleman to your left.
I just wanted to clarify something quickly. Can you hear me first? Everyone got me? If you picked up the Chinook forecast sheet and you did your own little math, looking at the total for the 2026 Chinook hatchery number, it's going to be different than what we showed on the slide. The slide is just showing the total for the stocks that are there in the table. And so it is missing Tulalip Falls, Grover's, Gorse, Minter, Chambers, and Deschutes. So if you were looking at that and you saw a difference there, it's because those stocks weren't included on the slide. Thank you.
Thanks, Haley. We will have all that information updated on our website. So if anything is incorrect or doesn't make sense, we will have that posted hopefully here later today for everybody to see. So,
okay,
we'll start.
Frank Urbeck again, and specifically, I used to fish the Skokomish, and I see you have it up there, but I want, because this is a public opportunity for input and other people in the audience have an interest. And I led the first rally we had at the hatchery there in protest of the closure by the department back in 2016. And again, in full disclosure, I've been deeply involved in this and working with Jim Scott, but I want to get this out on the table. I'm looking at the numbers, and this is, again, the forecast is well up on terms of hatchery Chinook. And there's enormous amount of opportunity that we're losing, not only because we can't access the river like we used to, and that was a fantastic fishery, and we want to take another run at that. But the other issue out there is you can't get access. You guys went ahead and some years back, and Ron Warren was still here, and try to give us some balance. You basically said, well, we're going to give you special regs. We'll let you catch 4 fish and all kinds of stuff. But the trouble is the tribe shut down, virtually shut down for all practical purposes, the one ramp that gives you access. And yes, you can get there if you buy an annual permit for about $350 or $400, and there's only a limited number of those, so access is precluded. So this requires some attention. I've gone directly with the director himself and Jim Scott quite a bit on this one, but we want you, because you've got this enormous, again, amount of fish coming back, we should have a fair opportunity. And trying to say, well, you just go out there and buy a kayak, and at my age, pushing 88, I'm not about to buy a kayak and try to push off from the shore. We need to get that access. So those issues have got to be joined. And we're going to be bringing this out in a public way. I have talked directly with the chairman of the tribe. We had a great relationship, except when I did, he said, well, we like it the way it is with nobody fishing out there. And so what we're saying is we need to get this elevated again. This is a year when you should get this back open, especially with such a good return and what's going on there. So I'll leave it at that, but I wanted to get this on the record. I wanted people in the room to hear it. I know this is going to be on Andy Wolgamott's show as well. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Frank. Leah online?
Yep. Our first hand online is Tim. Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yep, we got you.
Okay, hey, I have a couple of questions. My first one would be about kings. And we've come up a little bit in the next few years and everything. One of the things Alaska does that we don't do is kingfish for residents only. Why don't we, if we have a limited amount of kings, why don't we keep them for fish for Washingtonians? Non-residents in Alaska are limited on kings. I think that's something we can learn from and maybe cut back on the non-resident king retention. Onto the coho subject I have. I see that Hood Canals and areas and input, we were below escapement last year. I know we had talked about the numbers, and Area 10 had a significant input on those numbers, and we had talked about it. And I see we're still below escapement. Maybe if we cut down some of the days for non-select in Area 10, that would help in that recovery for the Hood Canal impact. And that's basically all I have for now. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Just a reminder to people as we get these proposals and stuff, and we start have the Chinook now next week, we'll be able to start plugging in different options and stuff. One of the things I wanted to highlight the last couple of years, I think we've had a lot of positive feedback as an online tool that we've been able to post online that people have been able to kind of go through a couple different options that have been presented. So we'll look to have that same as well posted online in the next couple of weeks. So.
My name's Philip. I fish Area 7 mostly. I saw the slide about VTR, so I had a couple comments on the VTRs. This is my first year at North of Falcon, so I'm going to write it down and read it to you. On VTRs, I'm new to this North of Falcon process, but I fished in Washington for a long time. Until I watched last year's meeting on YouTube, I honestly did not even know voluntary trip reports were a thing. Now I understand how important they are. Everyone in this room probably knows what VTRs are because you participate in this process. But in my opinion, the large majority of the public has no idea that they actually exist. With the current budget forecast, this seems like the most cost-effective way to gather data for the department. So my question is this: has the department considered promoting VTRs much more aggressively? Why not put them all over social media? Why don't we post QR codes at boat launches and docks? Why don't we put QR codes on game warden trucks? Maybe even print reminders on the bottom of licenses like Fred Meyer does on their receipts. We could also implement a program where we send email reminders to people who purchase single-day licenses right after that license was issued, or right after that fishing day was completed. My second recommendation is this: instead of treating VTRs as something people get fined $10 for not submitting, why don't we maybe turn this into a program that becomes something positive? Why not maybe create an incentive program? You could do a drawing lottery like special hunting permits, offer points towards hunting applications, maybe even offer cash prizes, fishing gear, maybe even offer a lifetime license drawing. I believe that there was 980,000 licenses sold last year. If each person just submitted one report, that would be nearly 1 million pieces of data. This is an incredible resource we should be capitalizing on.
So correct me if I missed anything in the question. The first question is, will we promote more? So last year we had it in the slide presentation, as you mentioned. We also worked with increasing that publicity through our blog. I would say some of the options or additional options you said, we're open to exploring those and absolutely trying to promote those better. We've tried to do a lot of that by word of mouth. We've also gotten feedback and suggestions for creelers or samplers or some type of method to provide those to people as they're coming in. So we're open to ideas that we can further explore to further promote those. I think the second part, and maybe that's, I'm not aware that we fine anybody for VTRs. They are voluntary. So I'm not sure. Maybe that's a mix up with the ECRC, but I'm happy to touch base after this if there's any clarification. But we're absolutely open to any thoughts and ideas that gets more publicity to this and how we can get more engagement from the public. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks so much for responding to that. I don't think that the VTRs are pinned as something that negative, and I do believe you're right that there is no fine for not doing them. But I did see something in a slide where it was VTRs were going to be required, and that's kind of more what I'm leaning in. Instead of making it a negative thing, when we do start to promote it, let's try and make it a positive thing so that there is some motivation for people to do it. I do know that the blog probably isn't a piece of social media that a lot of people take part in. There are other avenues of social media and ways that you guys could promote the VTRs as a thing that is needed. A QR code printed on the back, on the bottom of a paper license, or somewhere inside of the electronic license application that's been put out, I think would be a super easy and a super efficient way to make this program more easily accessible and let people know that it's something that we need. We need that information, and it's a program that's out there. I didn't know about it. I fished here for 20 years, and I did not truly, honestly know about it until I watched the information inside of North of Falcon on YouTube. So if the majority of people are probably like me, they don't get involved with this North of Falcon, and I think that this really needs to be pushed and be a full court press.
No, absolutely. Thank you. I got that noted, that positive promotion piece, and then also those other publicity. We do have, again, our communication teams up top, so we'll meet with them in the coming weeks and stuff like that. And then we'll look out even, we'll continue this throughout the North of Falcon process, and not just a one meeting in terms of how the public feels we can better promote these things and get more buy-in. So thank you very much for that.
Okay, our next hand online is Tony. Tony, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we got you.
I'd like to know who's responsible for the Nooksack chums forecast for the last couple of years. I'm a local here, and that was my question. And also, I'd like to see Baker Lake open this year on July 6th with a 4-fish limit.
Okay, thanks, Tony. Let me make sure I got this. Baker Lake open July 6th with 4-fish limit. And then curious about the Nooksack chum forecast, which it looks like, Andrew, you might be able to take that.
I can't answer that one. I'm not sure if anybody's online that can.
Tony, I think our pink chum specialist is in the commercial room. As soon as he's back from that meeting, or as that adjourns, we're happy to revisit that with him in the room, and he could speak more specifically to that. So Tony, remind me at the end of the meeting, and I'll see if Matt's in the room to get him to answer that. If not, we can get you that information outside of this meeting.
Okay, could I bring up what I've been seeing?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Could I bring up what I've been seeing year after year on the Nooksack as a local?
Sure. Just a reminder of the 2-minute warning as we try to get through all the questions.
That's fine. I'm a local here. I live in Linden. I grew up on the Nooksack, and I'm seeing a decline in the chum run. And for the last couple of years, it's been overharvested by the Lummi tribe down in the mouth of the Nooksack. Last year, they had a 2-day opener. They went to 5 days. It's net after net. It goes from the Marietta Bridge up to the Slater Bridge, one boat after another, 24/7. And your hatchery at Kendall Creek is not a meeting escapement. This has been going on for years, but it's not the recreational folks causing this problem. It's the overharvest by the tribes. And I've been witnessing this. I was down there hooligan dipping this year. We have a hooligan dipping above the Marietta Bridge, and I noticed again, it's boat after boat, 7 days a week, and that fishery is going to collapse. And I'm a witness of it.
Thanks for that, Tony. We got your comments. We'll be sure to touch base with regional staff over the coming weeks to talk through those things as a team. Thank you. We got Alex now.
Yep. Thanks, Jake. Alex Van Hine here, Marine Area 7 advocate, and really all Puget Sound fisheries advocate. Jake, I'm going to task you with something here. Give us your best pitch on what the data from STRs or VTRs will be used, or how it is used, how it can benefit angler opportunity, how it can benefit our modeling and estimates. Give us your best pitch on what the value is, and convince us that it's data that will be used productively.
I'm going to do you one better, Alex. I'm going to ask someone smarter than me on our modeling team to explain that.
There we go.
Ty Garber. I'm Ty Garber.
Hi. Oh, there we go. I'm Ty Garber. I'm the FRAM unit lead. I was the mark selective fishery biologist, so I was making these reports. You'll see my name in all of the reports. I also fish. I fish a lot. And I'm happy to hear you guys pushing on VTRs. I fish, and I filled out a VTR every time I fished for 10 years now, right? So the way they could benefit your fisheries is they gave us more confidence in our encounter estimates. We live in a game where everything has to be proven. Everything has to be reliable. There's some areas now, like, or kind of always been 12 and 13, right? We need VTRs in those areas. I fish those areas sometimes just to put in VTRs because I know it'll allow me to defend, the fisheries to the best of my possibility, really. So I'm happy to hear it, guys.
Thanks, Ty. I think there is a misconception in the public that the information on STRs can and is used against the recreational fishing body. I think it's important for us to clear the air on maybe how our season catch estimates are done in instances where it's a 5-year average, such as maybe our sublegal encounter number in Marine Area 7. Historically, we have such a low sublegal encounter rate that our 5-year average gives us that forecast or that control number to be what it is. So if folks were to submit, and maybe I'm going to comment here and then you can clarify, but if folks are going to submit an STR or a VTR and they have this perception, don't say we ever catch sublegals because they use it against us. Well, that mindset maybe help explain to us that doesn't benefit us in the future, because then in theory it drives our sublegal our numbers down. So then our 5-year average is then lower. So then our fishery control on that sublegal number is then in essence lower. So that really doesn't benefit us, folks out there, to do STRs or talk to creel samplers and tell them, no, you didn't touch a single sublegal fish if you indeed did. Because over time that actually will probably hurt us. Maybe touch on that and clarify. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. So you're right. We work on 6-year averages for the most part for the sublegal ratios in FRAM. We take this information from our test boats and VTRs to create the sublegal ratios that go into FRAM. And then in the season, when we're modeling, we use those sublegal ratios to estimate your encounters in the fishery. So it's concerning if you are not reporting accurately on your VTRs, because that sublegal ratio that's getting ingested back into FRAM will have an effect on your encounters later in the fishery. That answer your question?
So, yeah, so I think the highlight here is that STRs are not used against anglers. I think it's another tool or avenue that we can look to ensure we're getting the best information, that what we're getting from our fisheries is as accurate as possible. So thanks, Ty, for that. I appreciate it. And thanks for the question.
Okay, our next hand online is from Kyle. Kyle, go ahead.
Well, thank you. Appreciate all you guys are doing. All you all are doing for presenting this information and engaging the public here. I fish all over Puget Sound, coast, etc. And I'm concerned about the status of our ESA listed Chinook in Puget Sound based on the forecast that we're seeing. Historically depressed. We just had several great years of good environments, favorable for salmon returns, and we're heading into potentially challenging warming cycle. I know a lot of folks are concerned about what's coming up ahead for these natural stocks that really determine, our fishing opportunities and the viability long term of these fish. And Puget Sound, Chinook are at the end of a long chain of fisheries. West Coast, Vancouver Island, outside fisheries in the southern U.S., etc. The last few years, looking at some of the FRAM data and some of the stuff on individual river systems where we have the most constraints, you know, just in the southern U.S. alone, half of our natural stock impacts come from non-selective fisheries. A lot of it commercial fisheries prosecuted in the southern U.S., in the Strait, etc. And I'm just wondering, what are the plans, given this forecast we have and where we're at and where we're potentially going, what are the plans or approach to advocate to lower the impact of Puget Sound natural stocks in the 2026 process and beyond as input to the ocean setting PFMC process, or even the Puget Sound or the Pacific Salmon Treaty, I should say, renegotiation that I think is supposed to happen in the next couple of years? Will ESA listed Puget Sound Chinook be fairly represented in these outside processes, given the forecast and what's ahead? That has not been my impression from previous years that, or maybe I'm just not seeing or don't understand. Would really like to understand the department's approach to that going forward.
I'll take a shot at answering that, Kyle. I think looking at our fishery packages every year, it's trying to find a balance of that opportunity between areas, gear groups, and stuff like that. Going into this year, I don't have anything specific to answer that now. I think once we get that Chinook NALF and go into PFMC 1 and see what those options will be, we'll have a better indication going into North of Falcon 1, that meeting, that we could talk specifically of how those fishing packages kind of change and stuff. But I appreciate your comment about those considerations and how the department views those as we're trying to create seasons and opportunities.
Well, I appreciate that, Jake, and I just want to clarify. I'm the fishing side of it is certainly there, but just the reduction in impact on the ESA listed stocks in general is, what I'm kind of trying to put forward here. Given that so much of it happens outside of Puget Sound, and given where we're headed, is there a sort of proactive reaching into these? Are we going to be represented in Pacific Salmon Treaty and PFMC and these different things to limit impacts, not just advocate for our fisheries?
Oh, yeah. Sorry if I didn't completely understand the question. Yeah, so we do have representatives, PFMC and Pacific Salmon Treaty, that we do work on those larger scale issues. I don't have anything specific to add to that, but yes, we do take that in consideration as we're going through those meetings and those negotiations on those other fisheries outside of specifically what we're here to talk about today.
Thank you.
Hi, Art Tatchell here, recreational fisherman. I'd like to encourage the department to pursue vigorously, I hope, a fishery on the Skokomish River. There's a huge abundance of hatchery Chinook there. And I think the recreational community should have a crack at those. It was once a very, very popular fishery, and great opportunity will help spread out the fisheries, adding another river into the systems, as they can often get very crowded, as we all know. I know there's some challenges there. There's a reservation boundary dispute, and it is a dispute. It hasn't been officially settled. And I know there's delicate negotiations there, but I think it's time. It's been many, many years, and I think it's time to set a fishery on that, move ahead with it, work with the tribe as we always do, and also it would be good to model the fishery, maybe as a sidebar or whatever, so we can have an idea what that looks like overall in the FRAM. Thank you.
Thanks, Art.
Our next hand online is Gordon. Gordon, go ahead.
Thank you. As a recreational fisherman, we're always dealing with limits. I'm wondering if the commission has ever considered, instead of a daily limit, and let's say specifically, that we go to a seasonal limit, so that more fishermen have an opportunity. We can plan and schedule easier instead of, oh, I've got to be off on these 3 days to be able to actually have access to the water to catch those Chinook. Why not put a seasonal limit on the number of Chinook each fisherman can take so that it would spread out longer. We catch a fish on a Tuesday, we release it. Well, we know that fish could have been caught on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and maybe it's legal, but we caught it on the wrong day, so we can't keep it. Why not have a seasonal limit of fish that each fisherman is allowed to take? Thank you.
Thank you, Gordon.
All right, bear with me if I use the wrong vernacular on this. But from what I've learned so far, this fishery appears to be heavily data and model driven. It's an extremely number and focused system. I reviewed the 2024 Marked Selective Recreational Chinook postseason report, and it seems like this is the most up-to-date public information available for discussion. So my question is twofold. First, is there more current or more accurate data available that we can review? And the second question is, how can we have a reasonable discussion, planning process, or rule-making conversation when the information we are relying on is not time sensitive? Even very large and complex federal or state agencies are able to release a preliminary summary of data that are later amended and refined in a final report that at least allows the public to discuss current information while the final numbers are being completed.
So someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we're working on the 2025 report. That does take time. And then your other question, I think this goes much deeper than maybe I'll be able to answer, is some of these processes and sort of like coded wire tags and information like that, that stuff does take time for us to get that information back and run that through. So I think you said time sensitive. I think that, the agency does the best we can to get information as soon as we can, understanding that a lot of this information or modeling comes from a lot of inputs in a lot of different places. And so it's not always something that we can have within like a day or a week and something like that. So I know that's probably not the most technical answer for you, but I'm happy to provide you some more info. I can dig in and get more of a better feel for that. And looks like Ty and maybe Ann want to jump in and could give that more technical perspective.
Yeah. So I used to write a bunch of these reports. You see my name on them everywhere. They go out to review and with the tribes back and forth, and they give us kind of their corrections, which usually is mostly text or technical corrections on it. We haven't published a 2025 report, but it should be coming out very soon. I approved it. And keep in mind that our Puget Sound fisheries collect a massive amount of data. They are the most intensely monitored fisheries in the world. It generates a lot of data. It takes time to go and post-process this and error check it for it to come out. Our in-season estimates are also available throughout the year, which we distribute to our sport advisors, and also our raw sampling numbers are updated daily, multiple times a day.
So you've said in a short amount of time, and you also said very soon. When do you think we could expect to see those 2025 numbers? At least maybe an initial summary, that maybe could be later amended or finalized.
From my memory, it should be out very soon, and it's going through the approval process of being posted online currently.
I can speak to that a little bit. So yeah, literally, so the postseason reports are split by our winter and summer fisheries, and the winter report literally was just signed today to go to our folks that post things online. So we can follow up with them and say, hey, we kind of want this expedited. The 2025 summer report is still undergoing final review. It's very close. And then again, we'll fill out the paperwork and we'll get that online. So that could be maybe a couple weeks out. We do try to get that out as we're going into this process. So yeah, thank you.
thanks tying in. It was a much better answer than I was able to give. I would say maybe it's something, if that's of interest to people, that's something that we can put in like future slides with the North of Falcon, and as these reports come available, that we can highlight those for people to look when they're out. So thanks for the question. Thanks for the answer, Steph.
Okay, our next hand online is from Kurt. Kurt, go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon, and thank you guys for all your time and what you guys do for us. I've got a couple, one in comment is, we're 25 years, more than 25 years into salmon recovery in Puget Sound and our Chinooks. And looking at the tables that's presented this morning, we have fewer wild Chinook today than we had 25 years ago. Salmon recovery is failing, and we're going to try to craft some seasons within that framework. Typically a limiting stock has consistently been the Still-Gwamish, and the data I've been able to ferret out, the Still-Gwamish wild Chinook are becoming less productive almost annually, and the capacity to support fish is also declining. So it's going to be a chronic problem. The problem this year is worse than it was last year. Those fish are going to be limiting our fisheries, and to craft new fisheries that may impact Still-Gwamish or Snohomish fish means we have to take a fishery from someplace else. That's the reality we have to deal with. And more particular to this process, one of the frustrations the last couple of years in North of Falcon is we were unable to have a fishing package agreed upon, at least amongst the users, before the final meetings in April. And if we're to have meaningful opportunities, we've got basically two shots, North of Falcon 1 and North of Falcon 2. And our goal should be at the end of North of Falcon 2 that we as concerned anglers have had a chance to provide input and have a fishing package that we've agreed on by that date. And that means we have to make substantial process by the end of North of Falcon 1. But failing to do that, then the decisions are made on the fly that last week this year, I guess this would be down in Portland. And the reality is many of us won't have a chance to have an input in there. So I really would like to stress that a long-term goal or objective should be to complete the process from the recreational point of view by the end of North of Falcon 2. And I'd appreciate what you could do to facilitate that to occurring. Because it's really frustrating to spend a lot of time in the process and feel like you've lost any hope of having influence in that process because it's deterred or deferred until late in the process. Literally last year, I think it was like the last 2 days of the whole process before some of the decisions were made. And again, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Kurt, for the comments, and certainly do appreciate those in retrospect to the schedule last year. Last year was a very truncated schedule, and I think made things more challenging than other years. This year's calendar and meetings, I think, works out a little bit better, and we have more time, and everything will space out so that we can hopefully have more of those fishing packages available in a manner that has an opportunity for the public to provide meaningful input in a better time space. So certainly appreciate the comments, Kurt. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Carl Nyman. Our group fishes Central and South Puget Sound quite a bit, marine areas 9, 10, 11 mostly. And I really appreciate Kurt Kramer's comments, particularly about North of Falcon staying on schedule. This has become a big problem the last couple of years, and particularly last year where the ocean just took forever to come to any sort of package. And I understand a lot of this is not on the department. A lot of this has to do with tribal infighting and negotiations that are beyond your control. But anything we can do to get back on schedule, greatly appreciated. My comments are about the summer Chinook fishery in marine areas 10 and 11. We had in area 10 last summer, we had, I believe it was 11 days of summer Chinook fishing, which were broken up into 3-day sections of, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And I think this is because in like 23 or 24, we had a lot of sublegals, and there was a big concern about measuring those impacts and evaluating them each week. But it was pretty obvious last year that we could have run that fishery concurrently, and there are a lot of constituents that would like to see that happen as a 7-day-a-week fishery to start with. And, I mean, there are some positive aspects to that for people to be able to plan to go Chinook fishing, for the department to not need to have so many special rules submitted every week in order to open and close these fisheries. So, my proposal here is to look at the summer Chinook fishery as a 7-day-a-week fishery. I think we're going to have at least as much quota as last year, and hopefully more. From the looks of things, I'm hopeful that we can increase our summer Chinook quota in marine areas 10 and 11 and run a 7-day-a-week fishery. So I know there are some others that are supportive of this concept. So, that's my proposal. Thank you.
Thanks, Carl. I'm hoping the next couple of weeks when we get that Chinook and Alpha and before North of Falcon 1, we're able to have some options provided to look into. Thank you.
Okay, our next hand online is from Zachary. Zachary, go ahead.
Hey everybody, so bummed I couldn't make it down in person this year, but you probably hear from my voice. It's for everyone's benefit that I'm not. But I just wanted to ask about, maybe I missed it earlier, I know the Snohomish system has sort of emerged. If it's not the Stillaguamish that's constricting us in the sort of the interior, Puget Sound areas, it ends up being the Snohomish. And I know that a key part of that, the challenge of managing that fishery, is that there's separate, there's the Snoqualmie fall Chinook, and there is the Skykomish spring summer Chinook. And that I believe last year, one of the key issues was that despite having a large, return for the spring Skykomish fish, you had a very low Snoqualmie fall component, and that sort of ended up being a little bit of a surprise as the modeling went on. We realized, oh man, we need to make some big cuts because that component of the run was below a threshold. I don't know, I forget what it is. Do we know what the situation is for the two separate components of the Snohomish system this year, and whether the Snoqualmie is in that lowest, bound?
Let me see if Pete's available to give you an answer for that. One second, we're having some technical difficulties with the mic.
No worries.
Yeah. So the Snoqualmie population is below LAT this year again, and so we will be. That makes the southern U.S. exploitation rate at 8.3, and it'll have to be the same for the Skykomish population as well. So.
All right. And are there, I guess, just sort of last quick thing, is there any plan for trying to get some better data on the two separate components of those runs? Because, they are two separate stocks. And I know that one of the difficulties with our, fisheries, modeling is imprecise data. And one of the main ways we understand stock composition is through these coded wire tag recoveries. But given that we don't have a hatchery, the hatchery indicator stock for the Snohomish, or for the Snoqualmie is the spring Skykomish fish, and presumably those fish actually don't perfectly track all the time. Is there any plans for trying to get some better data there? Whether it's I know that DNA sampling has gotten a lot more affordable, a lot quicker over time. I know, but by the same token, I know that it's never easy to get the Canadians to play ball with sampling, or anyone else to sort of play ball. It's easier with the code wire tag. But is there any sort of medium to longer term plan to try and get some split out data on those two stocks?
But briefly, I'd say no. We don't really have any plans right now. I think you hit the nail on the head, in that we don't have a hatchery population to associate with the falls on the Snoqualmie, and so we're relegated to having to trust the Wallace code wire tags to represent them, which you're recognizing is probably inadequate.
Appreciate it. No, it's you got to do the best with the data you can find. But yeah, just wanted to check in on that.
Yeah, and it might even be a good question for our policy lead too, who I don't think is in the room. Oh, I don't know if you want to talk about that, Edward, or good enough.
Appreciate the question, and Pete, you handled it just perfectly. We do not have any long-term plans on having an additional coded wire tag indicator stack on the falls, but as co-managers, we continue to look at the data within the watershed to help understand those populations. So hope that answers that.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Next in here.
Hello, my name is Dan Stoffer. I'm Vice President of the Snow King chapter of the Puget Sound Anglers. Thank you for your time today, as always. I once again would like to suggest a fishery to make use of some hatchery abundance. The Issaquah hatchery had 1,900 fish excess Chinook, according to the report I read earlier this week. And I think the Labor Day fishery I proposed last year in Lake Washington, north of a line of Sand Point to Juanita Point, over Labor Day weekend is entirely possible. I would encourage the department to be very nimble anywhere we're expected to see hatchery abundance again. We've heard quite a bit about the Skokomish. The George Adams hatchery was abundant as well. I'm going to continue going through those reports. I might have more to say at North of Falcon 1 and 2, but Lake Washington seems to be a good place to take care of 900 to 1,000 fish over 3 days. We have the ability to monitor what's entering the lake at the locks. It's a very small area to keep an eye on people. I would think Sand Point and the Kenmore boat ramp would be the enforcement points for what I'm talking about. And I've started to engage the city of Kenmore where I live to try to make an event out of it if we can get this. The department already has a partnership in place with the city of Kenmore for the Kenmore boat ramp, and I would be very willing to work hard with both the department and my hometown to make this happen this year.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay, our next hand online is from Mark. Mark, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we got you.
Okay. I'm glad to see that on your initial season proposal consideration, the third bullet allowing non-select back in area 9 and 12 is there. I highly support it because I used to be able to have fish out there a lot, but it's mainly from shore, and on the eastern shore of Hood Canal, what you're going to catch majority is going to be wild fish. And the nets that are all around me, they are not releasing the wild fish. So if they're allowed to catch them, we should be allowed to catch them too. There shouldn't be discrimination between the people. And I'm just glad to see it's on your list. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the room? Gabe, hand first.
Yeah, thanks. Gabe Miller, Puget Sound Sport Advisor. Can you flip back to the screen where it shows the catch per day on the various areas? You guys have that in this presentation?
Yep. Can you go down, Leah? Do we have that? Yeah, in case we had any specific questions on catch per day stuff. Yep.
So going back to Carl's point, I think we're in a place in both 10 and 11 where we could start those fisheries out at 7 days a week, especially the June fishery in 11 that didn't even fully catch its quota last year. So I know I've talked to some of the other Area 11 guys, and we'd all really like to see that June fishery start out 7 days a week. I don't think we're in any danger. As long as our quotas are similar to last year, we shouldn't be in any danger of going over in the first 7 days before we could get estimates out. And same with the Area 11 fishery in the summer. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thanks, Gabe.
Our next hand online is from Brian. Brian, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we got you.
Okay. Area 9 beach only fishing is something I'd like to be considered with a two fish marked selective limit. So we had this fishery for years prior to 2024. So in 2023, we had 19 days of fishing. And that went down to 3 in 2024. So I'd like that to be considered, especially when you consider MA10 gets 60 days to fish basically resident coho before August 1st, and MA9 gets 3 if there's no additional Chinook days added. And, excuse me, this would be very big for, especially in pink years, and would also help boost tackle sales to our local retailers. And not everyone has a boat, but there are a lot of people that like fishing, and especially off beaches. And shore-based only management is not unique. It's been done before in 9 as well as 11. So again, I'd like you to consider that. And I appreciate any thoughts that you would have on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. We'll go back once we get that Chinook now and be able to work with our FRAM team to see what that looks like and plugging in those impacts.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Carl Nyman again. I just had a request on coho while we're talking Area 9 from some of our constituents that, however you decide to model your Chinook opener when you open it in Area 9, that once the Chinook season is over, if you model it as a season or the quota is caught, that then it converts to a coho fishery and you don't have a gap where it's closed. If there's enough impacts to allow for Area 9 to open for coho at the earliest point and to remain open and not have a closure, a checkerboard effect where you're opening and closing, we would like to see Area 9 opportunity to fish, whether it's, catch and release, coho fishing. We've got a request from our constituent Keith Robbins and our other catch and release anglers that, any opportunity is better than closure. So, and I know catch and release was on the bullet point this year for opportunities. So, and I don't know when and how you look at that, but always a proponent for opportunity to go salmon fishing. I would take it in the winter, a catch and release plug salmon fishery, plugs only. I don't care. Any restriction to be able to go salmon fishing at any time. I would propose a catch and release fishery in December for, with a gear restriction. I don't care. I want to go fishing. So, any opportunity. Yeah, my specific proposal, keep Area 9 open for coho when it closes for Chinook on the early part of the season. And, maybe consider a catch and release fishery in maybe Area 10 or 11 or, 9, someplace in the winter, because we know the participation is going to be very low. And we know it's a very tough sell to our co-managers, but we had a catch and release fishery in place for many years in Area 10 for 10 years. We have some data that shows that the effort is a tiny fraction of catch and kill fisheries. So yeah, look at catch and release fisheries again someday, folks. Thank you.
Okay, our next hand online is from Roland. Roland, go ahead. Roland, I see your hand went down, but we can't hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, we got you.
Okay, sorry, I'm in the car. Hey, I had a few questions. One is, as we've seen from the climate forecast and everything, I think hatcheries are going to be more important for returns. I'm just trying to figure out the hatcheries in general seem to have been built back in the 30s or 40s. I know money's an issue. So kind of a long-winded question. We recently had a big thing with culverts. I think we put billions of dollars into that. My question is, are you tracking particularly on the king side of things, because I know they usually spawn upriver, but are you tracking the results on the returns of that? And if it's beneficial, to what extent? And if it isn't, can we reprioritize that money? That's my first question. And I really want to know more about what you're doing for habitat, hatcheries, looking at new methods, sciences to improve returns. I know people talked about pentapods and all that stuff. That's a factor. But what about watersheds? I've seen what they've done in the Nisqually. They seem to have done some really good stuff there. Little surprised their numbers are down this year. But what are you doing from a hatchery and environmental perspective to better improve spawning grounds, hatcheries, so that we get better returns? And then are you tracking what you're doing, like the culvert removal program, to see what the impact has been? And if it's not as good as we think, and I was all for that, by the way, but I think we need to track it and just see where we put our money. And then the other thing is, are we looking at other ways of helping to fund the department, which I'm a big supporter of? I know you guys have had a lot of tough times, but are there ways that we can raise funds, work with the tribes, et cetera, to get you more budget? And then my last thing is the commercial side. I'm assuming that the tribes and commercial catch rates are included in your return rates. I'm hoping they are. I fished the coast. I fished the San Juans. I live there now, but I used to fish area 9 and 10. And what I've seen is that there's huge bycatch, particularly during the pink years, of Chinook salmon. And I saw that up here last year. We talked to some of the boat operators. I'm not going to get into that, but they were catching a ton of Chinook when the pinks were running, and I don't know how many of those survived. So I guess a lot of questions, and I appreciate everything that you guys are doing. I just want to know how we can better help and what you're doing with the funds and redirecting funds to different areas.
Thanks for the questions, Roland. So specific to this meeting, focused on forecast and season setting options, I don't have any information regarding hatcheries or the culvert removal, but we could certainly pass those questions on. The same as well for your raising funds and the commercial catch on the tribal side. So I appreciate the comments. We'll pass those on to the appropriate staff that could handle that. So apologize, I don't have that information today.
So I've reviewed several years of the North of Falcon meetings on YouTube and the presentations. In those discussions, the Stillaguamish payback provision was clearly treated as a constraint the department managed carefully to make sure we did not over-exploit it. This year, I haven't yet, and maybe I missed it, I didn't see any discussion on that provision. So I'm asking two questions. Is the Stillaguamish payback provision still in effect and something the department is required to manage to?
We still work within consideration the Stillaguamish payback.
So why is there no easily accessible report on the WDFW website showing its current status, the balance, or the performance? I feel there should be a clearly public-facing accounting of where things stand. When and where do you think the public might be provided with a current report on the status of the Stillaguamish payback provision?
I believe you can find it in the loaf, which you'll be able to find on the DFW North of Falcon webpage. I can't get you the exact page number, but it is located in the loaf, which is the list who agreed to fisheries.
And that'll have something for both sides of the equation on the Stillaguamish payback provision?
Yes, I believe so.
I'd have to go back and specifically look at it, but that would be a good place to start. So,
okay, next hand online is from Wendell. Wendell, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question about there was a previous comment made about a potential for an annual limit. Have you guys ever modeled that or looked at that to see what that number would be?
I'm not aware of that in the history. I think that would also depend on the marine area, timing, species and stuff like that. So I don't have anything specific to that. I'll look to see if any of our staff anything to better answer that.
Yeah, so kind of ad hocly, I've looked at this, and the way you get to this, you need to know the individual angler. The only way we could do that is through essentially your put the permit number on your catch record, and that data is compiled, and kind of results of that show that the catch per angler is a lot of times just one fish per catch record. So it means that a lot of fishermen, granted, a lot of people in here fish a lot, catch more than that, but the large population of Puget Sound anglers, or the majority of them, only catch a few fish. So that was my look at that data.
Am I good? Okay, everyone hear me? All right, my name is Kerry Hoffman. I'm a charter owner, operator, and also a river guide. And I just wanted the saltwater fisheries, marine area fisheries have been kind of well covered. I support most of what everybody said. I'd like to speak to the Skycomish River summer Chinook fishery, seeing as we have an 8.3% exploitation rate. I'd like to see that fishery be as close to last year as we possibly could. And being a non-pink salmon year, I'd like to see the Snohomish River coho fishery open October 1st with the bait allowed. That would be nice. I feel like a lot of those fish are usually, the Chinook are pushed through at that point. But up for debate with that if we don't have enough water and things like that as things kind of change. The other thing I'd like to speak to is the Skagit River Spring Chinook fishery that usually opens around Memorial Day. I'd like to see that open May 15th above Rockport. We did not have our catch and release steelhead fishery occur this year because of budget constraints. So I know we have some impacts to work with. I think somewhere around 350 fish. So whatever that equates to for that we could exploit or encounter, I should say. It'd be great to have that fishery occur. I know there's some hatchery Chinook up there in that time frame, so it'd be nice to have that. Beyond that, like I said, I just kind of agree with what everyone said for the marine area fisheries. It'd be great if Area 10 was 7 days a week. I think the numbers are there and can support it. That's all.
Thanks, Gary.
And we are out of hands online at the moment. Let's go to the next person in the room.
Thank you. My name is Pat Patillo, and I'm a Puget Sound Sport Fishery Advisor. I wanted to speak to that issue about the Stillaguamish payback. You are correct that it's in the LOAF, the description annually of the predicted forecasts impacts in all of the fisheries that would be pertinent for that year, with the payback as it's defined in the Puget Sound Chinook Harvest Management Plan and agreed to between the tribes and the state. But there is, I think, speaking to Philip's question about the importance of a report on that for the public, there is no publicly available performance report. That is, we see now, I think this is the with 25, that was maybe the third year that the preseason expectation is in the LOAF, but there is no report that is part of the requirement in the plan for how things played out with actual fisheries. So I encourage the department to pursue that. I think that the interest is legitimate from the public's perspective, that particularly since Stillaguamish is such a perennial weak stock, limiting fisheries or nearly limiting fisheries for Chinook in Puget Sound for sport fisheries, that that information be available. Now, there's only about 3 years of that information. It's an ongoing thing. I'm sure we would hear if it had exceeded and there was a penalty accruing. We have not, so I suppose that's good news. But I think the long-term performance of that and the effectiveness of that payback mechanism is a legitimate request from the public. Thanks.
Oh, thank you both for those comments.
We have a hand online from Robert. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Robert Larson. I would like to second the things that Carrie Hoffman said. The fishery on the Skycomish on silver is opening early with it being a non-pink year, if at all possible. I would also like to see the Skycomish give us as much as we can on those summer kings. They're great fish, and anything that we can do within the allowed limits would be appreciated, as well as the Skagit. The other thing that I would add is I would like to see Area 13 chum opened in the entire area on a specific date, not having to wait and guess. I got some numbers from Gabe Maddle, and I looked at harvest in Area 13 and Area 11, and the saltwater pressure in the later season is extremely low in terms of encounters in Area 11, specifically, which is already open for chum. And I think that opening 13 with the number of days that are not fishable at that time of the year and the limited number of anglers would take almost nothing to execute that fishery. And we're already fishing for Chinook. And so it would be nice if we encounter some nice chum that we could retain them. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Anybody in the room? And then we'll do another sweep online after that.
Alex Van Hine here again. It is my understanding that FRAM is broken down into different calendar-based data periods. I believe they are July through September, end of September, October through end of March, and April through June. Is that an accurate understanding of the FRAM time periods?
I'll get our technical staff confirmed. I believe they're different for Chinook and Coho.
My guy Pat here is telling me no. Okay, got it. Okay, so July through September, October through April, May through June. And are those time periods, are they the same for each marine area, or does it vary per marine area? Same. So if that is the case, then why in the last couple of years have we seen a Chinook fishery cutoff date of August 15th within the loaf? If the FRAM stock composition modeling periods run through September, then why are we hampering the ability to conduct a Chinook fishery past August 15th?
So you got to think of hear me this time? Okay. You got to think of the FRAM time steps as units, right? So it's one thing, July through September. And you could have less. You got to think of the time steps as one unit, right? So FRAM says you could have this much for this time step, but you can't have more, right? So you could have less in that time step, and it's not modeled for that actual like time period, right? It's just the time step. Am I going off my frame a little bit? So you could model the fishery, and if it's like catch per day or some other type of metric to get to there, you model that for the time period you think you're open, and you put that catch into the time step, and that's how the model evaluates.
Thanks, Ty, for that. I'm not sure if I'm hearing the answer to why we cannot conduct a Chinook fishery post August 15th.
The reasoning is when we model the catch for that fishery, if you put more days into it, it will increase the impacts on the stock for that particular time step. Does that make more sense?
Sure. And that's different now than it was a couple years ago.
No, it's always been that way.
I do recall us having Chinook fisheries up to the end of September prior, though.
Yeah, you absolutely can. It's just the impacts of the fish the impacts to the fish for the days open of that fishery, right? So back in the day, those impacts were higher through September.
Anybody online? Okay, I think Philip again.
This might be a mute point with the conversation the director had about budget, but I think it's important that we at least put it on the record. So here we go. Going back to when Derek Dapp was fielding questions about FRAM, concerns about the base period being outdated have been raised year after year. This is not a new issue. It has been consistent. It's a documented concern in public meetings. Given how long this has been discussed, I would have expected that the co-managers would have pushed the model to reflect more current and accurate data. Since this base period was last updated, and it's different based off Chinook and Coho, the hatchery production has increased immensely just for southern resident killer whales alone. There are many other factors which make the current base period pretty outdated. So my question is straightforward. Has there been any recent discussion about the updating of the FRAM base period? And if there has, do we maybe have a timeline or some updated cost or what the plan might be to complete something like that?
Let me see if our technical people can answer that better than I can.
So updating the base period takes years. It's a huge gathering of data, right? We definitely, there's a lot of interest in updating the base period, no matter who it is, it's a different interest. When you update the base period, there's going to be winners and losers when you do that, right? So I think updating the base period is important, right? Because you could have a different distribution going forward. And the FRAM, what it does inherently, it says, well, FRAM says these fish for this stock is at this fishery in time and place, right? And that could change over time. So we try to keep up with that. And there's been plans when Derek was around, he did the last base period. So I think, well, we should be updating the base period every 10 years by the harvest management plan. Right, Pat? Yes. So we should be having to update the period or the base period fairly soon next few years.
That's great news to hear. And I think it's important to say that, regardless of if you're a winner or a loser by it getting updated, I think that it's super relevant and super important that whatever information's put in there is accurate. And I think we could all agree to that.
Check online one more. If that will go, is anybody at Alex's?
Yeah, I really appreciate the work that you're putting into, that you do and that you have and continue to put into this, Ty. Just food for thought, or just an observation that I found by going through the Mark Selective summer fishery reports was I had to go back to 2021 before I found a single CWT originating from a Stillaguamish hatchery in Marine Area 7 summer Chinook fisheries. and I'm sure there's a lot of stuff I don't understand that continues to go into why Marine Area 7 is considered to have the highest impact on Still-Squamish origin fish. But maybe to a point of why we should look at updating FRAM is maybe that very reason itself. And maybe there will be a loser somewhere, but I sure as heck know that if Area 7 is considered the highest impact on Still-Squamish mortalities, but I have to go back at least 3 years or to 2021 to find a single CWT from Still-Squamish. I think that's relevant for Marine Area 7 fishermen. I think that presents an opportunity for us to finally maybe be in the winner category. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd say thanks, Alex. We can certainly look to have more information for our next meeting as we'll dig in and see if we can get more over detailed, I think, of what you're asking. Pat, I think you're up.
Maybe I have 3 questions, but let me make sure that I do these in order. First is one that I asked the department yesterday about Still-Squamish, the status with the forecast. The status with the Puget Sound Chinook Harvest Management Plan for Still-Squamish is related to the combined abundance forecasted for Still-Squamish hatchery Chinook and wild Chinook. And if you could look into that, maybe it's just been overlooked, but I'm just curious if the status might have improved enough to move the limit, the exploitation rate ceiling to the higher level. I didn't hear that, and so you could look into that. Please, thank you. The next question is about late Nisqually chum. You've heard the interest from the sport fishing community in Puget Sound for the chum opportunity, sport salmon fishing opportunity to go through the end of November. And we heard yesterday, but I didn't hear it today, and maybe I just missed it, is the late Nisqually chum run, that unique stock, that I think performed really well last year, and there was actually a much higher abundance in season, and it opened up the sport fishery in the December Christmas timeframe, and good news, and it seemed like that was an optimistic indicator for that abundance. But we heard yesterday that late Nisqually chum forecast was low and might have an effect on or raise a concern about a proposal such as you've heard from us about greater opportunity, increased opportunity in the November timeframe. If you could look into that, please. A little bit more information for the public would be helpful. And the third issue / question is related to Philip's comment about stock composition and the tags available from Area 7. And that's just an example, I know, but updating the model. It is interesting to look at the FRAM model and note that it is for the sport fishery, it is one of the highest contributors to the impacts on Still-Squamish Chinook in Puget Sound of all the marine areas. But curiously, for the tribal and non-tribal commercial fishery, there's zero impact. And that is one of the questions that I have or really an encouragement to the department to pursue a stock composition investigation. I don't think that quite makes sense, that there could be such a difference in for example, the summer time period, July through September, in the FRAM modeling, there's zero impact for, actually it's any Puget Sound Chinook stock. But for the sport fishery, it's the highest impact on all of the wild Chinook, including the most critical ones such as Stillaguamish. So I recommended that there may be a way to use DNA to check that, and recommend that a program to collect information from the, even if it was just the non-treaty purse seine fishery, it might shed some light on that, and maybe it would be a basis for encouraging an upgrade to the FRAM stock composition in the model and a recalibration. Thank you.
Gabe, did you want to add anything on the Nisqually lakes? I believe that forecast was a concern this year.
I think this is on. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm Gabe Madel. I'm the district fish biologist for South Puget Sound. Yeah, with the winter chum forecast, it's a little over 10,000 winter chum forecasted for this year. To put that into context, that's less than half of the escapement goal. So I think it's going to be pretty challenging to carve more opportunity out when we're going to be pretty constrained across fisheries managing those impacts.
Thanks for that update, Gabe. Go in the room again.
All right, this one's thick, so I'm going to kind of go slow. I've been researching the initial annual FRAM data inputs and comparing them to the final loaf binding and agreed numbers. When I research them, I've broken them down by specific fisheries, by area and river, also by source, meaning who's fishing. It is my assumption that when the initial data is entered into the model, the goal is to make it as accurate as possible. That way, as shaping occurs, it happens evenly so that everyone involved, regardless of how, where, and when they fish, we all absorb that shaping equally and equitably. I've noticed that some of the initial FRAM inputs, they appear to be significantly inflated. In some cases, 200 to 300% higher than what ultimately ends up in the loaf. From a public perception standpoint, it creates concern. It can give the impression that shaping within FRAM is not occurring equally or equitably, and that some groups may be absorbing impacts differently than others. That perception alone can create discomfort for anyone who has a vested interest inside of the fisheries included in LOAF. So my question is this: how can the department ensure that the initial data inputs into FRAM are ethical, accurate, and equitable so that any post-shaping adjustments that are applied are applied fairly to everyone involved, regardless of how, where, or when they fish?
So that sounds like a very detailed question that may require a much deeper answer than I would be able to provide today. But we've got it on the recording. I would say maybe with that question, let me go back with our FRAM team and we can have something prepared for a later meeting that's more detailed, I think, to what you were asking for. Does that make sense?
Completely and absolutely makes sense. Thank you so much for taking.
Yep, no problem. Again, not to pass that off. I think that would be much deeper. You had a lot in there. So we'll make sure I'm answering that correctly and have time with the team.
And we have Tony's hand back up. Tony, go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, we got you.
I was wondering if your chum manager is there, I could speak to him about the Nooksack issues yet.
The North Sound that Matt presented earlier today in the big room is 166, just over 166,000 for the chum forecast for 2026. And that includes the Nooksack, and I'm not sure if it includes another system, but on the map it looks like it does. So we can confirm that with Matt.
Okay, so Matt's not there because I wanted to talk to him about the overharvest that I believe has been going on by the Lummi tribe. on the chum run the last couple of years. So I wanted to talk to him about that because I have filed for a public disclosure request on the tribal catches in the river and to prove that there's being an overharvest there. So he's not available.
No, Tony, I think that might be getting a little bit deeper than what we're here with forecast and the fisheries, but I can assure you we'll get back up with our staff that are relevant to the Nooksack chum fisheries and make sure someone contacts you back so we can answer those questions.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Let me do a read of the room, see if there's anybody else with any questions. Anything online?
Thanks. Let's talk a little bit about test fishing in Marine Area 7 and ways that we can, beyond just maybe VTRs and STR, but ways that we might be able to improve the application of the test fishery and ways that we can better reflect the fleet, the way that we can better reflect the public on A, their location, B, their tactics, if and when they make a decision to move. I would love to hear what sort of improvements or what sort of brainstorming that the department's putting in place to maybe improve that system. Jake, you and I spoke on the phone about maybe something in where our aerial survey teams are communicating to our test boat teams and where they are able to identify where the bulk of our fleet is and communicate that to our test boat fleet so that they are, if they're not in the area with the bulk of the fleet, that then can relocate. Are some of those things being implemented? Can we get some feedback on if the department's making any efforts to improve anything on test fishery, specifically Marine Area 7?
I was just going to say specific to today, I think maybe a little outside, but what we had, I know last year we talked quite a bit of the Marine Area 7. We've got a heat map that we can have in a future meeting. And then the ideas and stuff, we're happy to take any of those proposals and how we can improve that.
Sure.
In addition to our conversation.
And real quick, before you jump in, Ty, I know you're going to have an answer for me. I just briefly, Jake, to your comment there is, if it's not today, then the next meeting that we get into is when we actually get into season shaping and actually make some season recommendations. So I understand that we want to keep like kind of on topic, but this is probably the most wide open forum that we're going to get in this entire process.
Yeah, no, not pushing back on you there. I think without us having a lot of details today, I think you're in a much deeper issue where this is across multiple groups with our sampling group, our modeling group, and stuff like that. So,
understood.
I think certainly after this, I'm happy to get with you and make sure I understand all that stuff so that maybe we can have something prepared for the next time, because this did come up last year and we do have some slides and stuff available, more information that would, I think, foster a better conversation that we don't have available today.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, it looks like Stephen, you're unmuted. Do you have a question?
Yeah. So my this isn't really a question, it's a comment on the technical aspect of this meeting. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we can hear you.
So, I've attended a lot of Zoom meetings. I was a former government official. And to be honest, this is a really important meeting, the first kind of start of the gauntlet to the fishing seasons. And honestly, I don't mean to rag the production folks, but I can barely see your guys' faces. The microphones, with the exception of the gentlemen, are way too far away from you guys' mouths. I'm missing a lot of comments from you, and it's kind of intermittent as far as the voices fading in and out. People online and people in the room seem to be able to be heard mostly. But I'm getting a side view of you guys instead of a face on. It's way far away. I'm looking like 40 feet away from you. It just seems like, in this day and age, after COVID and all the Zoom meetings and online stuff that we have, it could be done better here. We're talking about millions of dollars of fishing, huge amount of license sales in the state. Obviously, a lot fewer folks attending these meetings, but you're going to have them attend. You need to be professionally organized, and you need to be able to see what's going on, look at your faces, hear the comments and the responses. And if if somebody's voice is quiet in the audience, you need to repeat the question. I don't see any name tags in front of you guys. Desk there, and I can't see what's on the wall with the exception of the flag in the background. And there was a nice, Chinook image there, but that's really not. It's just not good enough. I mean, we deserve that. We deserve a professional production staff. It would cost that much. Pretty simple these days. So that's my main comment on this. Going forward, we need to have a better technical aspect of this whole process in this kind of a union situation.
Thank you very much. We've noted that, and we'll work to improve those technical aspects before our next meeting.
Thank you.
All right, I have two more questions. If I can take them both, or somebody else can speak in between. This probably is going to be my baby this year. I've spoken with a highly regarded former FRAM modeling department employee extensively. I've also had several discussions with people who have a direct vested interest in quotas and over quota impacts within the Washington agreed fisheries. From these discussions, I have some serious concerns about what I believe are disguised data errors that should be addressed. Hypothetically, there are quotas given in Area 4. It is my understanding that Area 4 quotas have been exceeded in the past. The concerns that I'm seeing that some of these overages may be they're being effectively absorbed by buffers that exist inside of the loaf, specifically through in-river inflation assumptions. In-river buffers can be extremely powerful because a small number of fish, and Ty, maybe you can comment on this, a small number of fish on a highly constrained ESA-listed stock, like the Stillaguamish, Nooksack, or the Skykomish, can translate into large impact absorption and large consequences for outside fisheries like Area 4 and 5. From a public perception standpoint, it can look like these built-in river buffers are being used at times to allow quotas to be blown through in less constraining fisheries without the full accountability that would normally come from exceeding a quota. So my question is this: how can the department ensure that all in-river data inputs that go into the loaf, especially for ESA-listed stocks, are as accurate as possible, presumably using a multi-year historical average and a tight margin of error, no more than 3 to 4%, based on what was actually harvested and not something that might be harvested?
I would ask that I could get with you after time to ensure I'm capturing everything you're asking so that I can get a full answer. It sounds like you had some other conversations I'm not aware of, and so I want to make sure I'm getting all that information before I speak on anything that I misspeak.
Does Ty want to say anything on that? Do you have any comments?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I would like to address your question, but I just can't take it in all at once, right? So if you would give us some time to respond to you, or if you'd give us some time and write up so I could really better understand your question, because there was a lot there, it'd be appreciated.
Yeah, I just want to clarify exactly what you're asking for. And
I appreciate that. I completely appreciate that. And I know it's a heavy question. It's something that's it's something that's come up. And I just hope that you guys could take all the in-river inputs that are put into that loaf, all of them, in totality, and then look at the margin and look at what was actually harvested, and then I would implore the department in this process, because I know that this process is complex and there's lots of sides to this process, I implore the department to make those numbers that finally get put into the loaf at the end of the process are really close to what actually gets harvested with a small margin of error, not what could get harvested. Thanks for taking that comment. Appreciate you guys' response, and I respect that.
Yeah, no, we appreciate it. I just want to make sure, understand exactly what you're asking for, but also want to make sure that we're giving it the time that you get what you want out of it.
I have one more question, but somebody else could go.
Just a quick check online. It looks like Rick is unmuted. Rick, do you have a question? Okay, we'll go ahead.
All right, here we go. I've reviewed the Department of Fish and Wildlife Advisory Member Handbook, along with all the publicly available information online. The handbook includes an excerpt and a signature from Director Suswin, and it clearly outlines the purpose, the goals, the expectations, and the responsibilities of the advisory group. My understanding is that the advisory group should be an accurate depiction and represent the sport community as a whole, and that the members should be actively participating, knowledgeable, and communicative. Prior to this meeting, I reached out to nearly all the advisory members to get a better understanding of their level of engagement. So I asked them simple questions like this. Have you attended a North of Falcon before? Will you be on the advisory call this Thursday? Do you plan to attend the North of Falcon on Friday? So my first question to the department is this. How can we ensure that the advisory group members align with what is publicly outlined in the handbook and on the department's website to best serve the stakeholders they represent? Secondly, the handbook states that the advisory group meetings are open to the public and that the department's website includes membership rosters, schedules, agendas, and related documents. However, the most recent information posted online for the advisory group appears to be from 2022. Can we please have that information updated so the public can see current membership schedules and all the materials?
Answer your first question. I would say the best representation probably would have been through the application process and when they interviewed the different applicants. The second, yes, if we're outdated on updating our stuff, we will look to update that in a timely manner.
Okay, we have a question online from Cole. Cole, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, we got you.
Hi, my name is Cole Baxter. I'm a fishing guide in North Puget Sound here, particularly the Nooksack River. I'm just calling to say it looks like we're going to have quite a good run of coho on paper here. And, last year we had some debate whether to close our seasons down. I think it was the end of October, which I'm on the water every day and I see what the crowds are like and what fishing's like. And I think that fishery could sustain all the way through to the new year, which I know we have some issues with steelhead, but that season on the Nooksack and the fish, there's very plentiful, and the crowds are not nearly as what some of these other systems in Puget Sound are like. But with the over 100,000 coho coming back, I don't think there's any reason for any kind of short season or we'll see it during the season. But if it comes back 103,000 fish, it should support a fishery well into the new year. That's all I had.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll take one more question in here. And anybody else? Okay.
Could you please describe to me a successful fishing season?
Trick question.
No.
So, well, I would ask you.
It's not a trick question. No, it's not.
No, so I'm asking you, like, that I'm not sure there's a clear answer to that. So I would ask you what you would define as a successful fishing season.
I love answering a question with a question. But before I would go down that route, I want to hear what the department would consider a successful, as a whole, a successful, let's just make it a summer Chinook fishery.
So I'm not sure we have that defined as our objectives to create a successful season. I think we try to maximize our opportunity within our constraints. But if you have anything specific to
I would describe a successful fishing season as one that is as closely following LOAF within the dates provided, the quotas provided, with as little emergency closures or in-season management or fishery control application as possible. Something that follows LOAF as mirrored image as possible. That's what I would consider a successful summer Chinook fishery. Would the department believe that that's maybe something they would agree with?
I think you're asking a question of which there's not like a yes or no answer, right? I mean, if you look at our LOAF, and we've talked about this before, is a broader statement, is a broader time period that gives us ability and flexibility to move in season and as things come about. So I think what you're asking is that what gets put in the LOAF is that we match that as close as possible. And the closer we get to that, then that's what would better define a successful season in your mind, if I'm not misquoting you.
No, not at all. Well, so would, I guess the department can't differentiate on what's a successful or not successful season?
I think, again, you're asking a question that's impossible to answer. Everybody in this room would have a different definition of what's a successful season.
Okay, so there probably wouldn't be an answer if Marine Area 7 summer Chinook fishery would be considered a success on a management standpoint.
Again, I'm not sure what your question is. I think you're asking for me to design a successful season, and that's different for everybody. And again, as a department, we try to maximize the opportunity given our constraints each year.
Okay, I'll let it go for now. Thank you, Jake.
Thank you, Alex. Anybody online?
And our next person and only person online is Wayne. Wayne, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. My name is Wayne Lampley. I'm in Fidalgo Island and I fish in Marine Area 7. And my question, well, first off, I want to preface this by saying I'm not as experienced with North of Falcon as most of you are on this call. So I'm really kind of in a learning phase, but I want to ask kind of a simple question. I've reviewed, it looks, well, at least here, what I've got at home is decades of data on our salmon, primarily our Chinook salmon populations. And when I moved to this area in 2012, we had 92 days of Chinook salmon fishing in the Marine Area 7. And I moved away international. And when I moved back in 2020, we have 3. And the data that I've gotten off of your publicly available records, it's not proportionate for the number of days lost to the actual salmon population numbers. And so maybe there's a simple question for that. And that is my question. Why are there so few Chinook salmon days and no winter blackmouth in Marine Area 7 anymore? And my hopes is that we can have more opportunity to fish for Chinook in Marine Area 7. Thank you.
Yep. No, thank you. Each year we look to maximize those opportunity based on our modeling results and those conservation concerns and objectives. So certainly appreciate your comments on past and what we have now. So I don't have an easier answer than, we do the best we can to provide the opportunity we can given our conservation goals and current stocks of concern and constraints.
So I did look in the loaf just briefly. I skimmed it. It's 399. Not the loaf. I skimmed the loaf, and it's quite a few documents. I didn't see anything about that counting on the Stillaguamish payback provision. So I just wanted to say, kind of co-sign on what Pat said. My question earlier on the Stillaguamish payback provision was the accounting portion of it. Last question's twofold. Did the comprehensive management plan for the Puget Sound Chinook that was submitted back to NOAA in 2022, did that get approved?
NOAA is still working on updates to that plan. I believe last year we got an update. They were hoping to have it by spring of this year. And that was before the layoffs and the government shutdown and stuff like that. So I do not have an immediate, I'm assuming your next follow-up question is time frame for when we'll have an update.
I just want to get it on the record and get it out there and find out if we were going to be managing that and how long. But obviously there's stuff outside of our control on that. So I respect that position. Did Lyle make it back in the room from the ocean side? Kyle? Oh, perfect.
Are you looking for Kyle or Lyle? Sorry.
I'm new, so bear with me. We talked about PST real earlier, and I didn't get my question in, so I just want to put it on the record, and the answer could be the same. That's okay. We can keep talking about it as we keep moving forward, but it's encouraging to see that the Stillaguamish natural Chinook numbers are trending higher than in recent years, now just sitting 180 fish below that UMT, that upper management threshold. That progress matters, and we should be doing everything possible to protect and build on that. With that in mind, I wanted to point you to page 23 of the Puget Sound Chinook Comprehensive Management Plan. That page states that 55.6% of the Stillaguamish fall Chinook fishery mortality occurs in Canadian waters. That is a significant portion of the total impacts on that stock. I understand that the department has no jurisdiction over Canada. I respect that completely. But I do believe that you have a seat at the table through the PST treaty process, which is up for renegotiation. My question is this: have renegotiation discussions already begun in a meaningful way? And what position is the department taking to advocate for measures that would reduce the 55.6% mortality share over the next 10 years in that agreement period?
So I actually can't stand close that speaker. I actually walked down about the RMP question, so I'll circle back to that. Negotiations on the new salmon treaty chapters are just getting started. What's been ongoing is their obligations for the United States and Canada in the current chapter. So at the commission level, they've been looking at impacts of Canadian fisheries and whether they're meeting the obligations of the current chapter and having serious discussions about places where maybe one country or the other is not meeting those obligations. That will feed right into renegotiations for the next chapter. I won't be the one sitting at the commission table talking about Chinook, but that stuff will happen. The RMP question, Jake answered it well. NOAA obviously had a bunch of setbacks, lost a bunch of staff capacity, wasn't working for a month or so back in the fall. So haven't gotten an update since they got back to work, but we will not have the long-term RMP for May 2026 fisheries. There was an earlier question that I heard the tail end of about the FRAM base period. So new FRAM base period took 4 or 5 years to develop. We first implemented that for fishery planning in 2017, but there are a whole bunch of other things that have to happen. When you kind of redo your base period, you have a new understanding of what stock impacts were. We went into mediation with the tribes on a new Chinook RMP, came out of that late in 2017 with a new RMP. NOAA told us that wasn't sufficient for consultation. Went back into mediation, came out of that with a plan in February of 2022 that NOAA's still evaluating. As soon as we update the base period, that starts that whole process over again. So NOAA's just going to sign the ink on this. If we say new base period, then all the assumptions that went into that are could change. So it's a long process to actually do the technical work to do a new base period. And then you have to figure out, okay, what does that mean for fisheries planning, for co-managed objectives, for ESA obligations? So it's a big, complicated process that doesn't happen in a short time.
Okay, we have a hand up online from Kevin. Kevin, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Kevin Gajita. I primarily fish on
in 10, 11, and 13, and a little bit in 12. Question is, I mean, the biggest impact I see for my fisheries is really in kind of in season pivots, which I know are necessary. But the biggest complaint I hear is how we're test fishing and the impact of test fishing on how they're doing it and what they're counting. I was wondering if the department had any plans to visit how they do test fishing and how it implicates into our seasons and the elimination of days out of our season. Thanks.
Let me double check, make sure on your question. Is that how are we validating our test fishing? Is that right? Or-
Yeah, not only how are we validating, but often many of us change out of how we're fishing to make sure that we're targeting mature fish instead of sublegals, or that we're changing from wild. Is the test fisheries doing similar things, or are we sitting on top of sublegals and wilds, expanding our counts, thus
No,
eliminating fisheries?
Yeah, no, we're constantly moving, trying to mimic the fleet, using different gear, different areas, different times of days and stuff like that. And we do get quite a bit of feedback from our public, and we do try to, again, mimic the fleet as best we can, depending on the season, the fishery, all that stuff.
And how is the oversight of that, as far as to ensure that, since it does make a substantial impact on our numbers, is there constant monitoring and kind of coaching with the groups that are out there to ensure that that's actually happening?
Yes, I would say there's daily communication between our staff, our creel, who's interacting with anglers, how they were fishing, what they were fishing, and that gets relayed back to our test fishers.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Question.
Hold on a second. We're going to go to one in the room.
I think, Jake, you can probably clarify this. So if I understood Kyle correctly, that once NOAA approves the RPM, it'll be revised to say that this is the approval date, and it'll be managed for 10 years from that approval date. Because right now I think it says 2022, 2023. And we know that we're going to use it for 10 years once it's approved, despite us using it for the previous 3. So if I understood him correctly, once that is approved by NOAA, because we're too late in the process to make any changes to it because it's sitting on their desk, or any significant changes to it, then at that point we will be operating under the current FRAM time step or base model for an additional 10 more years. So we won't even get to even potentially updating that FRAM base model until 2035 or 36 at the earliest. Is that an accurate understanding of that?
I'd want to double check with Kyle, but yeah, I believe so, that 10-year agreement period starts when that's signed. But here comes Kyle, so I'll just double check so I don't misspeak.
So
I got a question. I got a question if somebody wants to answer.
My latest understanding is that when NOAA approves the RMP, it will be for 10 years starting essentially the year they approve it. What I don't know is what a change to the FRAM base period would look like, whether that would be large enough that NOAA would say we need to reinitiate consultation on the plan that we already approved. There's a high likelihood of that. And how long it would take to sort out, okay, what do new management objectives look like and all of that, I don't know. It's a big unknown. But if we did do another FRAM base period update, all of that's on the table.
Okay, I'm going to go to, it sounds like Rick, you've been able to unmute. You want to go and ask your question? Rick, you're still unmuted now. Okay, we're going to go to Lowell. Lowell, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I missed something. Could you either show or repeat the forecasted numbers for the Stillaguamish?
Are you speaking about Stillaguamish, Chinook, or Coho?
Oh, Chinook. Sorry about that. Yes, for the Stillaguamish Chinook. Thank you.
It is 245 age 2s to 3s, and then for the total, and then the naturals, which we're mostly concerned about, is 136, which is more than last year.
Thank you.
Did we get Rick back, or was that Rick?
That was Lowell, but I think we did have Rick back. Rick, do you want to go?
Yes, thank you. This is pertains to Area 10 pretty much. Last year at the Issaquah Salmon Hatchery, I know they had over 18,500 fish return. They spawned 1756 from what I'm reading, and there was 10,000 fish left on the table that they only released 163 upstream. And the sports fishermen didn't have a shot at any of those fish. And you kind of know they're coming by the counts. So I don't see a reason that wasn't opened up. Just like a lot of other hatcheries I've noticed with a surplus of fish.
I think I missed it, part of that. Oh, hold on. We're looking for response there. Hold on 1 second. We'll get staff.
Can you hear me? Oh, yeah. So I think you got some numbers mixed up there. 18,000, I think that's what we counted at the locks. And that that number's not very accurate. Less than half of those fish show up in the remainder of the basin. So there's actually very few fish left over for harvest.
Okay, well, I was just pulling up numbers. I wasn't quite prepared for the meeting, but I wanted to jump on. So,
Well,
yeah, thanks for asking.
It's a good question. And we've been getting this question before. Yeah, we've been getting really bad hot water issues in the ship canal. And it causes overcounting. Yeah, so it looks like we get a lot of fish there, but we don't really.
I gotcha. Okay. Appreciate the answer.
It looks like we have a hand up from James Dixon. Go ahead.
Hi, thanks. This is James Dixon. I work for NOAA Fisheries, and I'm the lead on the review of the Puget Sound resource management plan. Sorry I couldn't be there at the meeting today. I usually try to get to this one, and I appreciate Kyle and others, given, I think, pretty much good, accurate answers for the work. But just to provide a little bit more of an update, right now we're preparing the environmental impact statement for the review, and we anticipate that being out this summer. And with the review of the plan under ESA to follow shortly after that. So, our anticipation is that the RMP will be in place for management starting next season. And to answer the term, we're evaluating it for a 10-year period that would start at approval. I'm happy to answer other questions too if folks have them.
Awesome. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for James at NOAA? Okay, no, I think we're good. Thanks, James. I appreciate you jumping on there, and thanks for all the questions related to that.
Yes, thanks, James, for clarifying that. Okay, so my two obligatory things. Any guesses, Jake? You want to take any guesses? Non-selective. We'll just start getting to, so non-selective coho fishing in Marine Area 7 in the month of September. I love seeing that we are almost a full percentage point, maybe over a full percentage point under the 10% on the Thompson River with using last year's fisheries with this year's abundances. So that's great news. Let's continue to move forward with that. Until pretty late.
So yeah, it was mentioned, I think, in the first one. There still could be some small changes to that.
Okay.
Based on updated Canadian.
It's a good start.
Thanks, Steph.
You and I've obviously talked in detail, both in these meetings and outside these meetings regarding Bellingham Bay. 66,000 Samish River hatchery Chinook forecasted to return. We just continue to see that number increase year over year, which is great because obviously that's a reflection of successful ocean conditions for these fish, survival rate, the work put in for the SRKW food supplement program. The only downside of it is that Marine Area 7 anglers we're not maybe getting as much opportunity as we really wish to go after those fish. So I know you and I have talked about what it would take to potentially look at expanding the Bellingham Bay dates, and there may be some really outdated data that is affiliated with that, whether or not we've modeled that very in much detail or we have any impacts modeled in that. And but I'm still not afraid to ask. I'm still not afraid of, like, I'm not going to allow like some potential boogeyman to scare us from saying that, hey, we would really love 2 more freaking weeks up there, whether that's at the beginning of August or into October. I think we saw with the modeling that we did in the modeling tool last year towards the end, we saw a 0.05% increase on an impact there. So half. Yeah, 0.05. I'm not smart enough to equate that to a layman's term. So there's the 2 things that we know that Alex Van Hine is going to yell about all process long. But I'm going to go back to what is considered a successful fishery. And
can I respond to you real quick?
Yes, please do.
We have those on the list, and as soon as we get all the analysis and stuff, we'll start looking at options. So I just want to recognize that.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Marine Area 7, by and large, I feel confident with speaking on behalf of a lot of our stakeholders and participants in that fishery, was not a success. And I have a solution for it to be at least more successful. 2 things that you and I have discussed in detail. One would be for us to enhance our cohesiveness between our sampling units, whether that be for our test fishing boats, our test fishing units, and then also our aerial surveys. I think they can work together if we're not already, I think they can work together better to really hone in to mimic the fleet. I think we know we're pretty outspoken about concerns of the test fishing not being as accurate of a depiction of the fleet. We know that Rosario Strait holds a large proportion of the Marine Area 7 fisheries, and when we look at that heat map, we see a lot of interactions that are outside of that Rosario Strait and Eastern Islands area. And then the other thing would be for us to really try to give like an A-B here, like A, more weekend days, and B, more notice. I think in this new climate of fishery management, in-season management, season structure with these short-term openers, and then, this hurry up and wait to find out if we've got meat on the bone for us to go after. And then we often are looking at 24-hour, 36-hour notices to get folks on the water, and often that being a weekday. So the 2 largest complaints out of your constituencies, and I mostly can just speak for Marine Area 7, is lack of notice and lack of traditional weekend day opportunity for our working families. A way that we would have gotten that weekend day is if we had more accurate representation of Marine Area 7 stakeholders and constituents on the recently revised advisory group. So I'll probably not go into too much detail on the lack of Marine Area 7 representation on the advisory group. I did appreciate you and I having multiple conversations on what was a proponent for us in that fishery. So I suppose I'll probably just leave it at more notice, weekend days. People will be much happier up there. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. And I would say that's consistent with what we heard end of last summer as well. So duly noted from staff. So
Okay.
anyone online?
Yeah, Kevin, go ahead.
I had actually two questions. One is, how does it, with the high surplus fish that we see throughout a bunch of our fisheries, how does that affect seasons? And whether there's more opportunity for more terminal type of seasons in those positions? And then also, I was curious on if that affects the stockings in future years if you're seeing high surplus fish.
That seems to be more hatchery related. I would ask if any of
Yeah.
like our regional staff has that. That certainly we can try to get some more info. I would say in terms of your first question or comment on the high surplus would be highly dependent on the river system, species, and the hatchery itself. But again, I think that's more hatchery oriented than I would be able to provide at this time. But I'll certainly pass that question on to our hatchery staff.
And then how does it affect? I mean, I know at one time you look at the success of the pin raised fish for the coho and a real big push across the board as far as getting them out of the river systems and getting them into the salt with pin raised and the success of that. Do you ever see that expanding over to the Chinook populations? I know it's a hatchery fish, but it also affects, in here. But if there's any further opportunity, I know PSE has a Chinook pen process down on at Point Defiance that is very successful. I was wondering if the department is looking at expanding into Chinook for pen raised in Puget Sound.
Again, I don't have a ton of information on
Yeah.
that, but I'm certainly happy to like dig into that more, and hopefully we can provide some more. I know some of our groups have looked at some of the net pen rearing stuff, but nothing. I have any information that would relate to the fishing setting season here today. But
Okay.
certainly, I would be happy to pass that along for sure.
Thanks. That'd be much appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for the question. I'll look here. Any questions one more time? Leah, or go back online one more time. If not, I just want to say thanks to everybody for coming out. Really appreciate taking your time out of your day to come down here and also be online. Just a reminder, as you have more comments and stuff, please use our online comment portal. We do try to check that regularly, and we'll be using that throughout the North of Falcon season. If anybody had any additional questions or follow-up, there's a number of staff to be around helping pick up and clean up, so please come grab us. Again, thank you for everything. We appreciate it. We're hoping more information to come, and hopefully we're able to tease out some of these questions and proposals the next time we meet. And then as we get more information in terms of like modeling tools and stuff like that are available to the public, we'll be sure to announce that. So I really appreciate everybody. Have a safe drive home. Have a good rest of Friday and a good weekend. So thanks, everybody.